Welcome to the Würzburg Residence Quiz, the game that turns I sort of remember that into I know that cold. If you're going to stand in the vestibule or under Tiepolo's ceiling and rattle off names, dates, and details like you were there for them, this is how you build that muscle. Repetition is the whole game. We're going to hit the same handful of key facts again and again, from different angles, until they're just part of how you talk. 4 rounds, easy to hard. Round 1 is the warm-up. Names, dates, and facts every guide needs on day 1. Round 2 builds on that with construction timelines and the artists behind the rooms. Round 3 is guide-level mastery. Exact days, specific numbers, the details that make a tour memorable. And the final round is the gauntlet. Everything, mixed up, rapid fire, no mercy. Answer out loud before the reveal. Ready? Let's start the clock. Round 1, the warm-up. Here's an easy one to get us moving. Who was the architect of the Würzburg residence? Balthasar Neumann. He was the master builder behind the entire palace. In what year did construction on the residence officially begin? 1720. Ground broke on May 22, 1720. True or false? The Würzburg residence is a Baroque palace. True. It's considered one of the finest Baroque palaces in Europe. Which famous French emperor called the residence the castle above all castles? Napoleon. He said it was the most magnificent palace he had ever seen. Who commissioned the residence? Which Prince Bishop started the whole project? Prince Bishop Johann Philipp Franz von Schönborn. Quick one. How many continents are depicted in the great ceiling fresco above the staircase hall? 4. America, Africa, Europe, and Asia. Who painted that famous ceiling fresco? Giovanni Battista Tiepolo, the Venetian master. In what year did UNESCO name the Würzburg residence a World Heritage Site? 1981. True or false? The residence has more than 300 rooms. True. What global event badly damaged the residence in 1945? The Allied bombing of Würzburg on the night of March 16, 1945. Name the 2 grand rooms most guides highlight after the staircase hall. One is famous for its white stucco, the other for its frescoes of an emperor's wedding. The White Hall and the Imperial Hall. Who was the stucco artist responsible for the White Hall's decoration? Antonio Bossi. In what year did the Prince Bishops of Würzburg first receive that title, Duke in Franconia, from the Emperor? 1168. Which Holy Roman Emperor granted that title to the Bishop of Würzburg in 1168? Emperor Frederick Barbarossa. True or false? Before the residence was built, the Prince Bishops lived in the Marienburg fortress. True. For nearly 5 centuries before moving into the residence. What year marks the political end of the Prince Bishop's rule over Würzburg, when the territory was secularized? 1803. In the Imperial Hall, one fresco shows a royal wedding. Whose wedding is it? The wedding of Frederick Barbarossa and Beatrice of Burgundy. What year did that wedding take place? 1156. The court gardens sit right behind the residence. Roughly how large are they compared to the palace itself? About 3 times the size of the residence building. True or false? The fountain in front of the residence is called the Franconia Fountain. True. What year was the Franconia Fountain unveiled? 1894. Roughly how many prince-bishops ruled Würzburg across the centuries? About 50. Which room in the residence is dedicated to worship? Also designed by Balthasar Neumann. The court chapel. True or false? The cellars beneath the residence are still used for wine storage today. True. The Staatlicher Hofkeller, one of Franconia's great traditional wine estates. Let's close the round with a big one. What year was the residence's interior finally considered complete? Decades after construction began in 1720. 1780, 60 years after the first stone was laid. Round 2. Building the knowledge. Let's get specific. Balthasar Neumann was chosen to plan the residence. How old was he when he took on the project? In 1719. Just 32 years old. How long did it take Tiepolo to paint the entire seal fresco over the staircase hall? Only 14 months, between 1752 and 1753. Which prince-bishop commissioned Tiepolo's fresco? Carl Philipp von Greifenklau. Tiepolo didn't do it alone. Who helped him? His 2 sons, Domenico and Lorenzo. What year did Tiepolo actually arrive in Würzburg from Venice? 1750, and he painted the Imperial Hall first, before starting the staircase hall fresco. How many square meters does that ceiling fresco cover, making it the largest of its kind in the world? Roughly 700 square meters. The staircase hall itself, when was it built? Between 1737 and 1743 by Balthasar Neumann. How tall is the unsupported vault above the staircase hall? About 23 meters at its highest point. True or false? A fellow architect in Vienna doubted the staircase hall's vault could stand on its own. True. Lucas von Hildebrandt questioned its stability. It survived the 1945 bombing, standing almost completely intact. When was the White Hall's stucco decoration completed? 1744 to 1745, done in only about 9 months. True or false? Antonio Bassi created more than 2,000 individual plaster ornaments for the White Hall. True. What is the White Hall's original function? What was it actually used for? A guard hall, salle de gardes, where the palace guards stood watch. The White Hall's chandeliers came from where and in what year? Vienna, in 1750. Which Roman god is depicted above the White Hall's fireplace, fitting for a former guard hall? Mars, the god of war. When was the Imperial Hall decorated? between 1749 and 1753. Name the 3 artists whose work comes together in the Imperial Hall: architecture, fresco, and stucco. Balthazar Neumann, Giovanni Battista Tiepolo, and Antonio Bassi. True or false? The columns in the Imperial Hall that look like real marble are actually painted plaster. True, and remarkably, that fake marble cost about 10 times more than real marble would have. In the Imperial Hall's wedding fresco, how old was Frederick Barbarossa when he married Beatrice of Burgundy in 1156? 34 years old. And how old was Beatrice of Burgundy at the time of that wedding? Just 12 or 13 years old. The second great fresco in the Imperial Hall shows an investiture. How many years after the 1156 wedding did that investiture take place? 12 years. The investiture was in 1168. Who is being invested with the Duchy of Franconia in that 1168 fresco? Bishop Harold, Würzburg's very first Prince Bishop. True or false? The bishop's face in both Imperial Hall frescoes was painted with the features of Karl Philipp von Greifenklau, even though the events happened centuries before he lived. True. Tiepolo gave the historical bishop the face of his patron. Whose portrait hangs above the fireplace next to the wedding fresco? A prince bishop who reigned from 1729 to 1746. Friedrich Karl von Schönborn. And whose portrait hangs next to the investiture fresco? A prince bishop who reigned from 1749 to 1754. Karl Philipp von Greifenklau, the same man who commissioned Tiepolo. In the ceiling fresco's America scene, what beast is Lady America riding? An alligator. True or false? 2 American universities, Harvard and Yale, already existed by the time this fresco was painted in the early 1750s. True. Harvard since 1636 and Yale since 1701. How many years after the fresco was painted did the United States declare independence? 23 years. The fresco was painted in 1752 to 1753, and independence came on July 4th, 1776. In the Africa scene, which river god appears? The god of the river Nile. In the Asia scene, what animal is Lady Asia riding, even though Tiepolo painted it with the wrong features? An elephant. Tiepolo gave it African features by mistake, even though the scene represents Asia. Where can you find Tiepolo's actual signature hidden in the fresco, along with the year he finished it? In the Asia section, carved into a small stone, dated 1753. Round 3. Guide level mastery. Let's get exact. What is the precise date construction began on the residence in 1720? May 22nd, 1720. And the precise date of the bombing that devastated Würzburg and the residence? The night of March 16th, 1945. Exact date, if you know it. When was the Franconia fountain unveiled in 1894? June 3rd, 1894, a gift for Prince Regent Leopold's 70th birthday. How large is the Franconia fountain? Give its diameter. about 10 meters in diameter, with a total height of around 8 meters. In what years was the Franconia fountain most recently restored? Between 2019 and 2021. True or false? Napoleon supposedly tried to arrive at the residence with a carriage pulled by 8 horses, which meant it wouldn't have fit through the vestibule. True, the vestibule was designed for carriages of up to 6 horses, 3 to a side. Why was the vestibule's ceiling deliberately built low? To make every room that follows, especially the staircase hall, feel even more dramatic and grand by comparison. Give the exact dimensions of the staircase hall's vault, length and width. About 19 by 32.6 meters, covering roughly 700 square meters. Why were the stairs in the staircase hall built with such flat, shallow steps? To accommodate the wide gowns worn by noblewomen climbing them. What was Tiepolo actually paid for the fresco, the base amount, in Rhenish guilders? 12,000 Rhenish guilders, plus a 3,000 guilder bonus. True or false? Tiepolo's total payment worked out to roughly 60 times a stonemason's annual wage. True. How did that payment compare to Balthasar Neumann's own annual salary? It was about 13 times Neumann's yearly salary. In what years was the fresco professionally cleaned and restored in modern times? Between 2003 and 2006. In the fresco's heaven scene at the very center, which god is shown rising above the world, representing the sun? Apollo. In the America scene, besides the 4 severed heads symbolizing defeated enemies, what beverage is being offered as a symbol of the New World? Hot chocolate. In the Europe scene, why is Lady Europe seated on a marble throne instead of riding an animal like the other continents? To show she's the true queen among the continents, the seat of civilization and the arts. True or false? The Europe scene is the only one of the 4 continents with a complete architectural background. True. Tiepolo painted himself into the Europe scene. How is he shown? Wearing a white scarf and a red cap. Balthasar Neumann also appears in the Europe scene. How is he portrayed? As a military artillery engineer, seated on a cannon with a dog beside him. True or false? Neumann actually served as a colonel of Franconian artillery in real life. True. In the White Hall, which goddess of war was added above the stove in 1769, alongside Mars above the fireplace? Bellona. True or false? The golden curtains in the White Hall are real fabric. False. They are entirely painted plaster, made to look like drapery. Which Prince Bishop used the White Hall for dancing, dining, and the occasional theater performance during his reign from 1755 to 1779? Adam Friedrich von Sinsheim. True or false? The White Hall's floor is original to the 1740s construction. False. It was replaced due to water damage, unlike the Imperial Hall's floor, which is original. In the Imperial Hall, what are the 4 life-sized gods representing the 4 elements? Flora for earth, Juno for air, Neptune for water, and Apollo for fire. True or false? The windows between the White Hall and the Imperial Hall are actually mirrors. True. In the wedding fresco, why did Barbarossa need help from the Bishop of Würzburg to end his first marriage? He was seeking an annulment, and the bishop, Gebhard von Henneberg, helped make the case. One version says by arguing the marriage was never consummated, another says it was on grounds of being too closely related. How many children did Beatrice of Burgundy eventually have with Barbarossa? 11. True or false? Beatrice of Burgundy died in childbirth with her 13th pregnancy at age 39. True. In the investiture fresco, which two statues flank Barbarossa on his throne, representing virtue and wisdom? Hercules and Minerva. What document, sealed in gold, is shown being granted to Bishop Harold in the investiture fresco? The Golden Freedom document, which ceded the dukedom to him in 1168. True or false? In that same fresco, Bishop Harold kneels and places 2 fingers on the imperial scepter to swear his oath of fealty. True. At the very center of the Imperial Hall ceiling, above both frescoes, what scene ties the whole room together? Apollo leading Beatrice of Burgundy toward the Genius Imperii, the spirit of the empire. True or false? Real marble floors survive in the Imperial Hall, unlike the replaced floor in the White Hall. True. Which Prince Bishop was the very first to hold the title, receiving it from Barbarossa in 1168? Harold von Hirschheim. After Harold, how were future prince bishops chosen? Was it hereditary? No. They were elected by the Domkapitel, the cathedral chapter. It was never a single dynasty, though the Schönborn family produced several bishops over the centuries. In what years was the court chapel built? Between 1721 and 1744, designed by Balthasar Neumann. Whose life story is depicted in Tiepolo's ceiling frescoes inside the court chapel? Saint Kilian, the patron saint of Würzburg. Who built the organ in the court chapel? Johann Philipp Soffert. True or false? Although the residence itself broke ground in 1720, the court gardens behind it weren't actually started until 1756, after the main building was finished. True. What style are the court gardens designed in? Rococo. True or false? The wine cellars beneath the residence are actually older than the palace itself, with a history stretching back more than 875 years. True. Roughly how much wine can the court cellars hold? About 600,000 liters. After the 1945 bombing, one American soldier is credited as the savior of the palace for protecting its surviving structure. Who was he? John D. Skilton, one of the monument's men. Let's finish round 3 the way we started this whole game. In what year was the mirror cabinet, the final piece of the residence's post-war reconstruction, finally completed? 1987. It took over 40 years after the bombing to fully restore the palace. Final round. The Gauntlet. Rapid fire. What year did residence construction begin? 1720. Who painted the world's largest ceiling fresco? Tiepolo. What year did the prince-bishops lose their political power? 1803. Who designed the staircase hall's unsupported vault? Balthasar Neumann. What year was the residence bombed? 1945. Which prince-bishop commissioned the fresco? Karl Philipp von Greifenklau. What year did the prince-bishops receive their title from Barbarossa? 1168. How many continents appear in the ceiling fresco? 4. What year was the Franconia fountain unveiled? 1894. Who was the Whitehall's stucco artist? Antonio Bassi. What year did Barbarossa marry Beatrice of Burgundy? 1156. What year did UNESCO recognize the residence? 1981. What year was the residence's interior finally finished? 1780. Who commissioned the residence itself? Johann Philipp Franz von Schoenborn. And to close it out, what year was the final piece of post-war reconstruction, the mirror cabinet, completed? 1987. That's the gauntlet, and that's the game. However you scored today, the real win is what's sticking. 1720, 1744, 1780, 1803, 1945, 1981, run through your head without even trying now. Play it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and by round 20, these dates won't feel like trivia anymore. They'll just be the story you tell.